Alright, so we got the 3D9 spoilers, and this chapter is called Relief and Prayers, and I'm absolutely going to have to go into what was going on in the previous chapter because I wasn't able to review that one. I was hoping that this chapter was going to be a little longer and went into more stuff, but surprisingly it's not. Like, the previous chapter was 11 pages, and this one is as well. So anyway, we saw that the Todoroki family had come to the surface after the elevator stuff wasn't working anymore, which of course was very convenient for the plot. But we saw that they immediately noticed that Dabi was, creating his big sphere of fire from a distance. And we found out that Rei, his mother, was able to get a ride on one of these transport robot things. And it took her immediately to where Endeavor was fighting Dabi. And when she got there, she was like activating her ice quirk because, we know that she is like the originator of this ice quirk, which I think they call Frost in the anime, but I don't know if that's ever been officially confirmed in the manga. Maybe they also say it in the Ultra Analysis book, but I think it's only the anime where they say that. But we've never actually really seen her use it before, and she's using it here to defend herself from Endeavor and Dabi's flames, more so Dabi's, but also trying to use them to cool Dabi down and extinguish him. And she's also somehow able to survive this long enough, although she is taking a lot of serious burns here, which I assume if she survives this sequence, she will keep for like the end afterwards, which I guess could be symbolic to Shoto and the other family members getting maimed here, with Dabi and Endeavor, if Dabi survives, but that's a story for another time. But also Fuyumi and Natsuo show up at the same time, and they're using, I guess, their ice quirks as well. I mean, I guess they have to, because they don't have their fire quirks. They do have ice quirks, which they inherited from their mother. They didn't get the fire from Endeavor, because they have to use it here to survive, just the way that Rei is as well. And while this is happening, Dabi is very aware that they are there as well. Dabi, while he is unhinged and psychopathic and, on his death mission at this point, he only really wanted to take down Endeavor and Shoto. He definitely didn't want to kill Rei, Natsuo, and Fuyumi, because when he sees them, he's, calling out their names. So this is... I don't know, the beginning of Dabi's redemption. I don't really know how you can redeem him at this point. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of fans in the comments for Dabi, and that's fine. But I just mean, aside from him just being a character, I mean, what he literally is at this point. He's like barely human. He doesn't even have skin. He looks like a Titan from Attack on Titan. But we see Fuyumi and Natsuo trying to not only calm him down with their quirks, but also their words. And the chapter ended with Dabi laughing at Endeavor, which is, similar to the flashback that we saw of Toya laughing, manically kind of. And we see this vision of an alternate reality, I suppose, where I guess Dabi grew up and he didn't become Dabi and he stayed Toya. And we see what Toya would have looked like, if he wasn't Dabi. And we see the rest of the family around him too, without Shoto. And it's kind of like Endeavor finally acknowledging him as worthy, or actually his son, because all that he really saw as Toya before was just kind of like a failed experiment, which of course led to all of this. But that brings us to this chapter that begins with an explosion happening, and the cops in the HQ saying that the speed of the temperature's increase has slowed down, but this does not mean that they have managed to stop the explosion because the temperature itself has not gone down. So I assume this is in reference to what the Todoroki family is doing here, all, acting as interim firefighters with their ice quirks, but the temperature itself has not gone down as they're saying here. So there's still that ticking clock of Dabi going off like a nuke, which is the whole thing here, which is why Endeavor was trying to take him into the sky to, do what Iron Man did at the end of the first Avengers movie, I suppose, except not sending him into an interdimensional space portal, but more so, going down with the ship, which I was totally on board with, but it doesn't seem like Horikoshi wants to do that, and that's fine. We see Rei, Fuyumi, and Natsuo using their ice to protect themselves, and then it cuts to Dabi's POV. He's looking at Endeavor and thinking, everyone is looking at me. Oh, so that's how it feels. If it was such an easy thing to do, then why didn't it happen sooner? This is, of course, another callback to Toya in his youth. As he became more and more manic, he just wanted Endeavor to look at him. And he kept saying it, out loud, look at me. Because Endeavor, like we talked about, didn't see Toya as like a son or even so much as a person anymore at that point. He was more so just interested in Shoto. But now, in an ironic twist, everyone is looking at him, but for the wrong reasons. Meanwhile, while Tiger is telling all the heroes to evacuate. And we see that Uraraka is still fighting Toga in her twice form. Tetsu holds Kendo's hand to make her run faster, and the Mazagaki kids are in UA robots, watching the explosions on a tablet. So the Mazagaki kids, I assume, are those kindergarten kids or first grade. I don't know what grade they were in, but the kids from that part of the story where Shoto and Inasa had to make up the test because they had failed the provisional license exam. The kids that were kind of hinted at being like the next generation of UA heroes or just UA students. But also we see that Uraraka is still fighting Toga, and I assume that this is going to be the next thing that the story focuses on, maybe, because that still needs to be wrapped up. And it's probably going to be happening at a similar pace to this, I suppose. And then Tetsu holding Kendo's hand, I assume that these two are going to wind up together at the end. It was kind of set up that they're like a thing, or they're going to be a thing, which is fine. The reporter who appeared a few chapters ago was flying over the area in her helicopter and filming everything, while remembering Endeavor telling them to watch him. In one of the evacuation camps, the "can't you see it boy" watches everything while praying. So the "can't you see it boy," I'm pretty sure this is in reference to when Endeavor was taking on the Haya Nomu, and Endeavor still hadn't been redeemed yet. Not with the audience, but the people in the world, I don't know, they were kind of lukewarm on him. The whole Dabi scandal hadn't been revealed yet, but he was kind of just taking over for All Might because All Might had retired, and Endeavor, being the number 2 hero, was bumped up to number 1. So that was like his big proving moment, and this kid was like one of the main pillars in that. Cut to a cafe in the Philippines to show a woman also starting to pray. One of the Masagaki kids says, "It's okay, we still have 5 PP, man." And then it cuts to Shoto and Iida flying through the sky at an insane speed as Shoto activates his phosphor move. End of chapter. So yeah, 5 PP man is what they called him in those stretch of chapters / episodes. Shoto, because he has those little dangling utility things hanging from his belt. But yeah, the chapter is ending with something we were hoping that was going to happen sooner, but better late than never. Shoto and Iida are finally showing up here. Iida was able to muster up the last bit of his energy and was able to blast them all the way to where they are currently. They were like going off of buildings and stuff. This happened a couple chapters back where Stain also was witnessing this and finally acknowledged Iida and Shoto as true heroes, I suppose. But this was a necessary device to get Shoto to this area right here so that he can be the final, I suppose, firefighter to stop Dabi. And we knew that this was going to happen more or less. I mean, it was perfectly set up, so why not? But Shoto using his phosphor move again, which we saw him use in his first fight against Dabi, which was happening at the somewhat beginning of this arc. It was like over a year ago, I think, that was going down, right? But his phosphor move, in theory, should be able to, I don't know, mitigate the heat from Dabi, and then that will allow the rest of the Todoroki family to completely cool him down with their ice. And then, I don't know, I guess this will be Dabi's farewell, because I'm not sure how he's going to survive this. Because like I said, he's barely a person anymore. So unless they do completely cool him down and he's somehow able to live with like 18th degree burns or something, not really sure, but I do think that we're going to have our final moments maybe in the next chapter where Dabi, finally says what he's always wanted to say out loud, and the family says what they say to him, and like, hey, we're sorry, things turned out the way they did and we should have been better. At least Rei and Endeavor, of course. Fuyumi and Natsuo, of course, they come around as well. Natsuo more so. Fuyumi's kind of like the true innocent one in all of this. Shoto too, to a lesser extent. But yeah, that's the end of the chapter, and I'm kind of just ready to see the ending of this Todoroki family drama, to be honest. I mean, I do like it. It seems like this is the part of the story that Horikoshi really cares the most about. Like, he's put more into the Todoroki family's backstory and development than he has with the Izuku's, right? Alright, so we got the 390 spoilers, and it's looking like the Todoroki family drama is wrapping up in this chapter, or at least the bulk of it. There still is some more resolutions, of course, that need to take place, but I think the main conflict with Dabi is ending here, and judging from what's happening at the end, we're moving on to the next big final fight. But before we get into that, let me just quickly go over what had happened in the previous chapter, because we are coming off of a week break, and that chapter was extremely short. So we saw the Todoroki family continue continuing to use their ice quirks together in order to mitigate Dabi's impending implosion here. Endeavor is also right up on Dabi. I don't know exactly what he's doing. I guess just trying to absorb the flames or something, or just stopping the Todoroki family from getting completely nuked here. But Dabi was kind of having some kind of weird revelation where he finally noticed everyone was watching him, which is like a callback to when he was young Toya, because he just wanted Endeavor to watch him. But coming towards the end of that chapter, we came back to Shoto and Iida, who were on their way to Dabi's big explosive sphere thing. And Iida is like pushing his quirk to the absolute max here, going as fast as he possibly can. And I guess Shoto made like an ice jet around them or something, I suppose, to make them more aerodynamic, but also adding like a ton to them in weight. And Shoto's also like using phosphor at the end of this chapter, I guess, to further propel themselves. But that's where it ended. And this chapter begins with Iida's legs reaching their limit and him telling Shoto that he can only take him so far. He thanks him and propels himself using phosphor. The cops are shocked because he has reached transonic speed. So apparently transonic speed is greater than 250 miles per hour, but less than 760 miles per hour. So yeah, he's going pretty fast, but I don't know, I thought he would have been going faster than that. But still, you know, ultra impressive. So I guess Shoto was using phosphor and he's just continuing to use it to get him to the destination because Iida can't keep up anymore. And I really hope that this isn't Iida's like end game. I mean, there is going to be quite a few more chapters in the series, so hopefully he'll have something else that he's going to do other than just transporting Shoto. Sukuuchi remembers All Might's words, but the two students begin the key and realizes that he has finally become a good teacher. Iida then thanks his friend for allowing him to become his ideal self. So yeah, that's worrying me right there, Iida saying this. Like I said, I hope this isn't like his last thing he does. Probably not, but it might be the last like significant thing that he does maybe. And that's why he wishes for Shoto to also become his ideal self. This is when a narration begins, showing what he wrote in the letters to his mother. He says that he is giving his best every day to reach his classmates' level. He's even been practicing conversation. So that's cute. I really do like post-character arc Shoto, which I guess is like the Shoto that has taken up the majority of the series at this point, but he was kind of rough in the beginning, if you can remember back that far, or if you've recently watched season 1 and half of season 2. He really has become one of the better characters in the series for sure, and I do appreciate that Horikoshi has put so much time and effort into his backstory as well as his family's backstory and their development. To be honest, it seems like this is the most depth and development that any character or set of characters get in the entire series, even more than Izuku and All Might. These conversations have led to many conflicts, but the resolution of said conflicts has allowed him to understand other people's feelings. His friends feel anger and cry even for strangers, and he also wants to be like them. He then finally gets close enough to the rest of the family and thinks to himself that if Dabi's origin was really something so simple, they could have solved it long ago. This is when he uses Great Glacial Anger again, the same move he used in their previous fight. So I don't know if this is the translation that Viz is going to use, but this is kind of funny the way that he's wording it, because once you break it down to its bare essentials, it is something really simple. Like, a lot of this could have been mitigated with just open dialogue and conversation, which isn't as practical in real life as you think. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people listening to this come from just, you know, normal, fine families, but speaking for myself and people that I know and, you know, through things I see online, it's not really that simple, and you'd be surprised by how little open dialogue and communication families and people just in general have with each other, and it could lead to huge detrimental outcomes in relationships and just people's life paths. But aside from that, Shoto, like it says, is using the Great Glacial Anger, and I guess this is like his ultimate move. Like, this is the apex of what Shoto can do, where he builds up like his fire and ice and then just hits them with like a massive wave of apparently cold fire. It's just really a super powerful gust of Shoto-ness, I guess you could say, which initially put out Dabi and like froze a portion of the city as well around them. It was a pretty cool sequence. Everyone is still watching, and the Mazagaki children are smiling. Shoto realizes that the rest of the family was also there, saying that this is a good thing. His ice attack alone wouldn't have been enough to stop Dabi, since his fire was even hotter than in their first fight. He ends by saying that this just proves that he can't do everything by himself, so he's not a masterpiece at all. Toya regains consciousness and says, "You guys," and then starts saying that everyone should die, including himself. So I guess they're extinguishing Dabi here? Like Shoto using the Great Glacial Aegir along with the support of the Todoroki family using their ice quirks, they successfully put out Dabi. And I guess Endeavor is being extinguished as well. He's gonna come back in after this. But Toya's saying that, everyone should die, including himself. Not so much the former, but definitely the latter. But judging from what's happening, like I've been saying, I don't think Dabi is gonna bite the dust here. Natsuo sees the ice inside his chest. I guess he's referring to Dabi here, and asks what he's going to do next, because all that awaits him is a hellish life. Endeavor apologizes for not going to Sokoto Peak. Toya then says that he hates all of his family, and Endeavor asks him to tell him everything he feels. So yeah, this is going back to what we were talking about earlier. Just have some open and honest communication. This all could have been mitigated. Even if they just couldn't have done it amongst themselves, they could have just went to therapy or something, like group family therapy. I know we're, making light of it, but honestly, guys, it can help so much more than you think. Not talk about necessarily therapy, but just communication and being honest. But also going back to Natsuo seeing the ice in his chest, if you're just unaware or you forgot, it was revealed a couple chapters back that Dabi unlocked his ice quirk that he apparently had hidden away within him, which, of course he inherited from Rei, but he needed to come to like the brink of death to awaken it for some reason, because that's just how awakenings work sometimes. But I don't really think much is coming up this ice quirk, at least yet. Maybe this is going to come back into play in the next couple chapters, and it's going to lead to, I don't know, whatever brings Dabi back to not being a corpse. But going back to Endeavor's apologies here, he then apologizes to Rei for all the abuse, to Fuyumi for pushing all of the responsibilities onto her, and to Natsuo for abandoning him. When he goes to say something to Shoto, he just mumbles, "I'm sorry," and apparently loses consciousness. So, Endeavor finally apologizing? I mean, he has kind of apologized before, but I guess never outright like this and consecutive to all the family members at once. And yeah, these are huge transgressions, but at least he's saying he's sorry. That's something. But yeah, I don't think he's dying here. Rukasu is specifically saying loses consciousness. But yeah, that seems like the Dabi stuff is pretty much over, or at least Dabi exploding. So I guess after this, we're just going to have some supplementary chapters or panels dedicated to the dialogue, dedicated to wrapping up this Todoroki family drama, unless it's happening in the next chapter. But let's go over these final spoilers. So, cut to Toga, and she sees that the flames have gone out. She remembers Dabi's words, saying that they should all smile. Her eyes get teary, and she wonders, "Toya, were you able to smile?" In front of her, Ochako looks determined. End of chapter. So yeah, it looks like we're probably going to be moving on to Ochako versus Toga and the big end resolution of this, because Toga is for sure Ochako's final opponent here and vice versa. But it still feels like we need to have another chapter dedicated to like just the Todoroki family talking here, but I guess that's not going to happen, and we're probably going to have to wait till the end of the war. Because, Endeavor just passed out, and Dabi, I guess, is going to pass out too, or whatever's going on with him. And Shoto's barely hanging on. So, yeah, this might be something that waits until after the war is over. And yeah, we're moving on to Toga versus Ochako.
Alright, so we got the 391 spoilers. And as we speculated, we're going into the next final fight of the series, because we had just come off of Dabi's versus the Todoroki's final fight, where we saw Shoto show up at the last moment and use the Great Glacial Aegir, along with the help of the rest of the Todoroki family, to completely put out Dabi, like cool him down. He's frozen over and he's no longer going to explode. And Endeavor fell over with him, and Endeavor did his long-awaited, I guess, sorries to his family and everyone, and Dabi's still not remorseful, and we don't know if he's dead or not. It's going to be addressed in this chapter, but, you know, we'll get to it when we come to. But at the end of the previous, we saw that it was pretty much going to Toga versus Uraraka, and yeah, coming into this one, that's exactly what's happening. So the chapter begins with an army of Twices fighting the heroes. Pixie Bob summons a giant earth wave and manages to scatter them. But more Twice show up behind her and start attacking. Tiger shouts her name, but he also gets caught in the endless attack of clones. So yeah, this is just continuing the battle that's been going on. I haven't been able to see this, but this sounds like a pretty impressive feat from Pixie Bob. Kind of an underrated hero, to be honest. A narration then begins explaining how Toga's quirk works, and saying that the heroes have no way of knowing how much blood she has stored, but even if they did, it wouldn't matter. Once the Sad Man's parade started, the Twices became too many for the heroes to handle. So yeah, I'm pretty sure she only had like a little drop of blood. But you know, it's the narrator saying that it doesn't matter, but yeah, like, they're speculating about how Toga's quirk works along with Twice's and how that works, and we'll get into that. Kami, Shishido, and many other heroes are getting attacked by the Twices. We see Shoto unconscious on the ground, while Natsuo, Fuyumi, and Iida listen to the sound of the clones fighting in the distance. So does Hawks, who stands up again, holding his sword. So Shoto is unconscious now. He's definitely not dead, but like we talked about, he used the Great Glacial Ager, and that was like after already using it and fighting Dabi in the first place. So yeah, he's completely exhausted. I'm sure he might come in again towards the very end, but he needs some recovery time, I guess. And Hawks, who we're seeing again, had his quirk stolen by All For One, who I'm pretty sure didn't even use it. And I don't know where this is headed with Hawks, because he's kind of useless right now. I mean, he's just kind of like a regular person, just with a feather sword. I mean, I say useless lightly because, you know, they're going against gods at this point. And at least with his quirk, he could have did something, but now he can't really do much. But maybe that's going to be his character arc or something? I don't know. It cuts to Ochako floating in the air to get free from the clones that were surrounding her. But she gets hit in the face by one of the Twice's measuring tape. Toga asks herself what happened to Toya and if he's really dead, wondering if she has just lost another friend. So yeah, like I said, it's being addressed here, definitely not being confirmed. Toya referring to Dabi. Interesting how she calls him Toya. I guess she has before, but in my opinion, I don't know. I don't think that Dabi is going to die. I actually made a collab theory the other day with Turtle Quirk and the Lunchtime crew, talking about how the three main villains, you know, Shigaraki, Dabi, and Toga, might get rewound via Eri back to being children, possibly. So check that out if you're interested in that. And I'm not just saying that Dabi's not going to die because I want that theory to come true. It's kind of just like a fun one. I'm not really holding it too closely, but it just seems like Horikoshi, I don't know, has some kind of redemption in mind for Dabi, even if it's like a light one, because Dabi went down still, you know, telling off his family. He didn't even have any kind of remorse at all. So I'd be surprised if Horikoshi just ends it like that, but then again, I guess he very well could. It just seems like he at least needs more time talking to his family than what he actually had, considering how much it was built up and how much attention was placed on that storyline. Like, the Todorokis probably have the most depth of all of the characters in the series. Ochako grabs onto her arm using her wire and a new special move, Zero Gravity Spacewalk. She says that she's only known Toga for a short time since the summer of last year, but since then her opinion on her has changed greatly. So this Zero Gravity Spacewalk, I guess Uraraka is using her gravity manipulation quirk to kind of just like walk in the air, which is cool. I haven't seen it, but I'm sure she's applying it in a very useful way. Toga says once again that it's too late for all of that, and Ochako apologizes for taking so long, but now she has finally found her amidst the chaos. She saw Toga's tears and thinks she's figured out why she can't use Twice's quirk to the fullest. So I think Uraraka is finding like the original Toga here because it's the only Twice that's crying, maybe. I could be wrong, but I think that's the implication here, because you know there's the Sad Man parade going on and there's hundreds of thousands of Twices everywhere. so finding a Toga amongst them is nearly impossible. And that may be because Toga's murderous intent, but going back to why she can't use Twice's quirk to the fullest, and that may be because Toga's murderous intent is mixing with her love for other people, diluting those feelings within her. Tsuyu speculated that maybe she didn't love Shigaraki and the others enough, but Ochako thinks that's not exactly it. So what they're talking about here was revealed, I think, when Toga first started using the Sad Man's Parade a couple chapters back, and she did become Twice and multiply into Twice, but then the Twices started to use their quirks to make like Dabi's and Shigarakis. And as soon as they came out, one of the Shigarakis like put his hand to the ground, to use decay, but it didn't work. And that's when Tsuyu started speculating that, oh, maybe she didn't love them enough, because Toga can only replicate somebody's quirk after becoming them if she quote unquote loves them enough or whatever, because that's how we saw she was able to use Uraraka's quirk along with Twice's. So, fair speculation, I guess, as to why she wasn't able to use Shigaraki and Dabi's. Also, it would have been over instantly if you just had an army of Shigarakis with Decay and an army of Dabi's with his cremation quirk. Yeah, there's pretty much nothing anybody could do. Aside from Izuku, I guess. So yeah, it is a plot convenience, but also there's more to it, which makes me think that maybe this is actually going to happen. Maybe she will, I don't know, have some kind of breakthrough since they're talking about it here, and then she can replicate those villains once again and use their quirks. Then it's like, oh my god, everything really is over at that point. That's way too powerful. But that's the conclusion she came to after hearing the Twices repeating "heroes must die" and seeing Toga's tears. Then Toga shouts, "Shut up, Ochako Uraraka. What do you know about me? Nothing." And her face becomes herself's again instead of Twice's. End of chapter. So I guess we're going to be going into, the final 2 chapters of this fight, I suppose, because we're going to just have full Toga going against Uraraka here. As we saw before, she was in Twice form. And maybe they'll just have like their singular battle while everyone else is kind of fighting the Twices. But I would really like to see if she's able to use like Shigaraki or Dabi's quirk or something like that, because that's when things are going to get really interesting. But things are already lopsided for the heroes as it is, so they would need some intervention as well, unless it just ends with them being completely defeated the way that their battle with All For One ended possibly. But
alright, so we got the 392 spoilers, and there is definitely a tragic twist that happens at the end of this chapter that could have some possible serious ramifications, but we'll get to it when we get to it. But before I get into these spoilers, of course, let me just quickly go over what had happened in the previous chapter. So we moved away from the Todoroki family drama stuff and we went back into Uraraka and Tsuyu taking on Toga. And Toga was doing the Sad Man's Death Parade, which I guess is like a more manic, maybe bigger version of the regular Sad Man's Parade. But as Uraraka was taking on this wave of Twices, she was trying to get through to Toga. I don't want to say talk no jutsu, but just trying to get through to her with words. And she basically pointed out to her that she realizes Toga is upset because she's unable to replicate the quirks of the people that Twice is able to clone. As we saw before, back when Twice was still alive, the people that he replicated, he could use their quirks as well. But Toga isn't able to do this. Like, she could make Shigaraki and Dabi, but she couldn't activate their quirks. And it upset Toga. And Uraraka said it's because she's got bloodlust mixed in there, and she's not working off of pure love, because that also goes into Toga's quirk. If she loves someone that she becomes, she can use their quirk as well. But apparently she's got too much bloodlust mixed in there, so she's unable to replicate the quirks of the others. And this triggers Toga, and she exposes herself. So now Uraraka knows who the original Toga is in this army of Twice clones. And that brings us to this chapter that begins with Tsuyu tied up by Twices, saying that she couldn't dodge the clones' attacks due to the injury she took on Akotu Island. Uraraka shouts her name and Toga starts yelling at her, saying that she acts like that because she was born with an easy life. A flashback begins with Toga's parents accusing her of killing the bird to drink its blood. Toga denies it while crying, saying that it was already dead in the backyard. We then see her being taken to
to Quirk counseling. The lady there says they'll make her normal. We then see Toga walking in a park while seeing different forms of love, like a couple holding hands and a man playing with his dog. She remembers all the time she was told to act normal as she watches everyone, biting her own finger hard enough to the point of bleeding. Then we see her parents asking if she sucked the blood of a friend from school, and Toga says she didn't. She just gave his bruise a little kiss. Her parents say that this isn't normal, and Toga replies that she doesn't understand what this means. Toga is crying desperately, asking her parents why she has to repress her love, why she can't turn into other people, why doesn't anyone else feel the urge to drink blood like she does. The parents are screaming, saying they have given birth to something that is not human. So yeah, we are revisiting Toga's tragic backstory here. And we are seeing, as I've talked about before, a common theme amongst the villains, and it's that they're kind of victims of their circumstances. They didn't really ask to be the way that they are. And with Toga, her quirk kind of makes her behave the way that she does. And we've seen before, the bird symbology, her killing the bird, or allegedly killing the bird. I guess it was dead, but still drinking its blood. Also, there was more bird symbology, which was really graphic for the series, but the way that Toga's quirk works, like I said, compels her to feel the way that she does. It's not really her fault. She was just born with it. It compels her to consume the blood of others, and considering that the most powerful aspect of it requires her to love someone or have strong feelings for them in order to replicate them entirely, including their quirk. So it's just how she was born. She's born to feel this way. And there's definitely some mental health issues sprinkled in there for sure. I mean, it's not like she's perfect, but who is? But also, obviously, her parents aren't helping either. And I don't want to generalize this too much when I'm talking about her parents and how they're behaving here, especially in the current social climate on the internet. Because yes, the way that her parents are acting is somewhat relative to most areas of the world for sure. I'm sure some people that are watching this video right now are dealing with some similar sentiments from their own parents. And if you are, I'm sorry about that. It's going to get better, don't worry. But I also got to say that, Horikoshi is probably giving some commentary on Japanese culture, Japanese parenting in general. There, I said it, but anyway, I digress. Cuts back to the present, and we see that a vestige of Curious is talking to Toga, saying that this is why she put on a mask, suppressed her emotions, and turned into someone who was not really her. So that's interesting. So Curious, of course, is the member of the Liberation Army that Toga fought back in the Villain Academia arc, which it's like season 5, right? And one of the few villains that actually gets straight up killed in this series. Like, it was actually a really cool sequence. Toga winds up activating Uraraka's quirk. That's actually when we find out that Toga can use the quirks of people that she becomes if she loves them or has strong enough feelings for them. And she used the gravity quirk to send Curious up in the air and then deactivated it and just dropped her. It was one of the better sequences for sure. But now she's like seeing the quote-unquote vestige of her, which is interesting because this is the same kind of rhetoric that Curious was spouting to Toga when she was alive during their fight. So this really did get to her because it was the truth. She is suppressing her emotions, considering her upbringing. Ochaku pulls Toga with her wire and Jiro arrives on the scene, going to hold a falling Tsuyu. But Kamui warns her that that's not the real one because she's already holding Tsuyu. That's when the falling Tsuyu's face distorts, getting a huge mouth and eyes. So we've seen this before. Toga already was able to replicate Tsuyu because she was able to get her blood from a wound that she received. This actually happens back in chapter 375. And also in that chapter, we got an update on how long the time limit of Toga being able to use twice his quirk is, which is like 30 to 40 minutes considering the amount of blood that she was able to consume. But then again, 30 to 40 minutes in manga time is like a day, so it doesn't really matter, but I guess it will come back into play since it was mentioned. Tsuyu's clone attacks Jiro, but Kamui destroys it. Toga starts making more clones of Tsuyu and Jiro, and Kamui says that the clones are drinking the blood that's dropping through the battlefield. Jiro is surprised to see herself cloned and puts her hand on her injured ear. So yeah, now she's becoming Jiro as well. And as it says, the clones are getting the blood from the battlefield. Jiro's ear was blown off a couple chapters back. A lot of chapters back, actually, in her battle against All For One. Like, he fired off that air cannon thing. So yeah, still having ramifications of that. Tsuyu finds herself surrounded by the clones and starts talking to Toga, saying that she thought a hero's duty was to follow the rules and that anything that opposed that was villainous. But now her friend is more focused on reaching Toga than following any of those rules. She thinks that this path, that of understanding, is much harder than arresting or killing everyone. So, even though Ochako is a bit too late, Tsuyu asks Toga at least listen to what she has to say. But in the next page, we see Ochako getting stabbed in the stomach. Ochako coughs blood, and Toga says that they are fundamentally different. She can't feel the same joy as everyone else, and she's tired of people judging her life. The last panel of the chapter is a flashback of Twice asking Toga if she won't pick a villain name for herself. So, this is the twist I was talking about. Ochako getting stabbed in the stomach here, coughing up blood. So I would like to think that there are going to be some ramifications from this, and that there is a possibility that Ochako can die, but guys, come on. We all know that that's not going to happen. This is kind of par of the course for what has been happening lately. Yes, characters do die in this series for sure, but there's no chance, guys, that Ochako is going to bite the dust here. I mean, come on. I mean, if she does, I would happily be proven wrong. I mean, I love Ochako. She's one of my favorite characters for sure, but I just don't feel any kind of like stakes, or I don't feel anxious or even worried one bit. This is more so just Horikoshi trying to up the stakes here, and I understand, but Ochako's going to pull through this for sure. But the real question is if Toga will be redeemed. Does she have a better case of being redeemed than Dabi? For sure. I would say that Dabi is more despicable than Toga, but both are far from innocent. So expect Ochako to, I don't know, maybe have some kind of quirk awakening or some kind of ultimate move that comes out of this, possibly. This pushes her to finally defeat Toga. And also, maybe we will get a villain name for Toga, which is interesting because we never really had that before. I like that that's being brought up here. Maybe she says it in her final moments. Alright, so we got the 394 spoilers, and I think this is the end of Toga versus Ochako. Or maybe there's like one more chapter after this, I think, but this is a pretty fitting ending, I would say. There could be more dialogue in the next chapter after this, but this is essentially the finale. So coming off of the previous chapter, we saw the most heated part of the battle, I guess, or at least up until this point, where Toga and Uraraka were continuing their physical and verbal aspect of it, and eventually came to the point where Ochako was telling Toga that, you know, that smile of hers is perfect, and that she's jealous of it, like she's some sort of deviant. And we also saw Uraraka doing, I guess, some kind of quirk evolution where we saw like these bubbles or water or something. I don't know. So I'm sure maybe it's her tears or something. I don't know. But she disperses it through the crowd of Twices, and she's able to spread her float quirk to them. Like, she doesn't have to make physical contact with them to make them float. As Jiro points out, she says it's like it's spread between bodies that came into contact. And it ends with Uraraka saying, look, I can't erase all your crimes or approve of everything you've done, but if any part of you still feels like talking to me, you can have a lifetime's worth of blood, so let's have that chat about romance, Himiko Toga. And that brings us to this chapter that begins with Ochako realizing that there's something weird with her quirk that even she doesn't understand. Jiro realizes that everyone is floating, and Toga tries to create more clones, but they are born with the zero gravity bubble surrounding them. Toga realizes her quirk evolved, just like what happened to her own during the fight with Curious. Kamui holds Tiger with his arms and asks if he's the real one, but a clone wouldn't withstand that much damage. Tiger is impressed with how much Ochako grew in just 1 year. So yeah, Uraraka's quirk has evolved for sure. As we talked about in the previous chapter, she can now disperse her ability through things and have them as conduits to transmit her quirk instead of having to make physical touch with her pads on her fingers. So I guess she's using her tears here as conduits, which is pretty cool. And if the tears touch something, then they make things float. So I guess that's Uraraka's quirk evolution here. Ochako feels her body getting cold, but that doesn't matter. What she wants right now is to be able to touch the sadness inside Toga. The two are connected by the wire, and Ochako starts saying that her parents are poor and she wanted to become a hero to help them. So Ochako's saying that she feels her body getting cold here is from the blood loss. She was stabbed by Toga in the previous or 2 chapters ago, and it was pretty bad, but she's kind of just fighting through it here. And like I said before, I really don't expect Uraraka to die here. It would be extremely unlikely for that to happen, but we have to raise the stakes, of course, or at least I just hope she doesn't die. And I do like that it's going back to her original motivation here with her parents being poor. That's why she became a hero, just to pay the bills. But, it also turns out that she's really good at it as well, so that helps. But she realized the world is bigger than that, and more people need her help. In the meantime, she developed a crush on Izuku, and is now determined to stop Toga. All of this is what defines Ochako Uraraka, and it's why she's here right now. Ochako shouts, asking Toga to tell her everything she's thinking, everything she's feeling, and everything she's ever felt. She remembers Dabi and all the tragic moments from her childhood, which makes her even angrier as she prepares to stab Ochako. But she stops the knife and starts talking. She says she falls in love very easily, be it with animals, villains, heroes, boys, or girls. She's attracted to blood and can't help it, but everyone always told her not to smile, and she felt envious of other people's happiness. So I guess this is confirming that Toga is pan, or just give her whatever label you want. This is more so her just being, as it says, attracted to the blood because, her quirk compels her to consume it so that she becomes other people. Now, as for her saying she falls in love, take it for what you will. But at least I do really appreciate that Horikoshi is brave enough to say this much, because, not many mangakas and shonen are daring enough to go down this route, I'll say. I mean, it was heavily alluded to through various artworks that Horikoshi has done, and that's a story for another time. I don't even know if I could talk about that story on YouTube. But we kind of have been drawing the lines here as to where Toga aligns herself, we'll say. But again, it's just going back to her quirk, less about attraction to people. But the real question is, where does Uraraka lie on that alignment? Probably never know, since, her main ship is going to be with Izuku for sure, but I don't know, maybe in a bonus chapter or a side story or something one day. She had a crush on a boy who looked just like Izuku called Saito. She wanted to ask him to let her drink a little bit of his blood, but she couldn't do it because everyone said she wasn't a human being, that she wasn't cute, and this led to that incident. So that incident is, I'm pretty sure, Toga just straight up murdering Saito and forcefully drinking his blood. Like, that was her first kill, I think, and that's what also led her to becoming Toga. Or, I mean, she already was Toga, but you know what I mean, becoming a villain. I think she ran away after that and never looked back, but she was already being persecuted before that because I assume that she had run-ins with trying to get people's blood before, and the creepy smile that she always has with the fangs and everything. Again, just going back to Toga being inherently innocent, she's more of a victim of circumstance, but it doesn't excuse her straight up killing this dude, which also goes back to what Uraraka was saying in the previous chapter. It's like, look, I can't erase all of your crimes and approve of everything you've done, but, and there really isn't a but there, but Horikoshi has to put in the but because Ochako is Ochako. She is, a true hero in the My Hero world where they're just absolutely altruistic, unrequited altruism from a lot of the characters in this series, which I think Horikoshi kind of plays to a detriment sometimes, but hey, it is what it is. The League of Villains are the only ones who accepted her love from the start. Ochako says that Toga was already showing signs of this trauma from the beginning, but that she only realized it now. At this moment, the twice clones start to turn into dust. Toga realizes that the transformation is coming undone, and that Jin will disappear. Jiro lands on the ground and looks up to see Ochako hugging Toga. Ochako admits that she also admires people who keep doing their best, even when they're hurt and bleeding. So the twice clones are finally disappearing here, and I guess this is because the time limit. I think it said she only had like 30 minutes or something like that. I could be wrong. Now, either it's that because, you know, she did only have a little bit of Twice's blood, so she was on a hard time limit for sure, which was made apparent to us, so we knew that it was going to happen. So it's either that or she's just willingly letting the clones go because Uraraka got through to her finally. I assume it's like the time limit, but also kind of a mixture of her getting through to her here. Or maybe she's just more at peace with it now. She knows she'll never be able to take the League's place in her heart, but she felt she needed to say how beautiful Toga's smile is. Toga starts crying even more and asks, "Am I cute?" To which Ochako smiles and replies, "The cutest in the whole world." Toga then finally smiles. The last double spread shows all the Twice clones that were covering Gunga turning to dust. End of chapter. No break next week. So this is an interesting ending. It's a very happy one, I guess. I don't know if you could say that this is fully happy because of the context to it, but yeah, sort of a cheerful ending. Toga making nice with Ochako, which is good. I do think Toga somewhat has earned at least this much, but of course she shouldn't go scot-free. And I'm not even saying that she's completely off the hook from being killed here, not by Ochako of course, but just, I don't know, some other outside force that happens or whatever. But I wouldn't be surprised if in the next chapter, like, Toga just gets straight up arrested and then hold down and handcuffed after this. But, you know, she'll be locked up having this character arc somewhat, which is, you know, better than nothing. I do appreciate that she's at least getting this, but a full-blown redemption she should not get. Absolutely not. None of the League of Villain members should. But unless they get rewound in some way, which I think for sure is happening to Shigaraki. I don't know if it's going to happen to Dabi or Toga, but I did have a collab with Lunchtime Crew and Turtle Quirk, which I'll link at the end of this video, where we talked about the possibility of the three main villains getting rewound back to children, since they all share that commonality of, you know, being inherently innocent and being a victim of circumstance and whatnot. Some more than others, of course. So we got the 395 spoilers, and I know I said last week that that was probably going to be the final chapter of Toga versus Ochako, but no, I'm thinking this one is going to be it for sure, considering what happens at the end. It seems to have quite the finality to it, or at least somewhat. But let's go over what had happened in the previous chapter real quick before we get into it. So we saw Uraraka using her Quirk awakening. She was actually able to lift up the entire Twice army with this, including the other heroes that were there helping everyone. And this caused Ochako and Toga both to unleash all of the feelings and thoughts that they had been keeping inside of them for most of the series. Uraraka straight up confirms and confesses that she is in love with Izuku, and it forces like this kind of catharsis, and moments later it kind of forces this catharsis out of Toga as well, where, you know, she says that she easily falls in love with animals, villains, heroes, boys, girls. Yep, take it for what you will, but it's mainly to do with them having blood and how her quirk works, you know, her wanting to consume the blood. And then they have like this sequence where they're both children. I know it's kind of just an analogy and it's supposed to parallel to Izuku and Shigaraki, which I'm sure we'll get their child connection sequence eventually too. And we also find out that Toga's ability time limit is up because, you know, she only had so much of Twice's blood. So now the clones are starting to fade away as well. And coming to the end of that chapter, Uraraka basically told Toga what she always wanted to hear. And she thinks that her smile is special and that it's actually the cutest in the world. And that made Toga happy. It touched her heart, but we'll get back to the touching of the heart stuff because this chapter begins with all of the clones vanishing. We see that they were heading towards the Todoroki family, Iida and Hawks, and one of the clones had his knife pointed at Hawks, but it vanishes and Hawks says that Bubai Guara, who was Twice, was a really nice guy, right, Himiko Toga? So I guess this is like the only interaction that we're going to get between Hawks and Toga, unless they interacted earlier. But I think this is like their moment that they were going to have because, you know, Hawks killed Twice, and that caused like a whole big thing between him and Toga. A narration from Toga then begins, saying that her knife is something that allows her to become who she loves, so she shouldn't have held it with hate in her heart. We see Toga standing next to Ochako, who's lying on the ground. She has her mask thing on her hand. Toga is panting and starts to feel a lot of pain. It's a consequence of using her quirk. She realizes that Ochako is so exhausted because she didn't release her awakened quirk until all the heroes were back on the ground. She really didn't want to hurt anyone. Ochako knows she has lost a lot of blood and cannot move a finger. Toga looks around her and see all the people who got hurt because of her, and at the same time she remembers Ochako's sweet words. She knows that the loss of blood is also her fault for stabbing Ochako. So yeah, I think it was like 2 chapters back, Toga like stabbed Ochako in the stomach, and we knew that it was definitely gonna cause a moment like this. I mean, I didn't think it was gonna kill her, which it doesn't, but it did lead to her having a lot of blood loss, which is culminating in this sequence for the rest of this chapter. Hey guys, also, if you like my Hero spoilers, please subscribe if you haven't already. I'm always going to upload spoilers as soon as we get them, and it looks like we're going to be going back into more of the Izuku versus Shigaraki stuff possibly next, so I'm going to be doing chapter reviews for that as well. So again, if you just needed a reminder to subscribe, here you go. Thanks guys. She tells Ochako that the League of Villains want to destroy everything, and what would rise after that would be a world that's easier to live in. But she was so happy with what Ochako said that now she can't allow a world without her to exist. Toga drinks Ochako's blood and transforms. So that's interesting that they're bringing up the League of Villains endgame, which is essentially just All for One's endgame, where he kind of just wants to control all the resources on Earth and have everyone essentially rely on him, where I guess the League of Villains would be like his underlings and they would, I don't know, I don't want to say rule, but it essentially is a farce in the end. I guess it's trying to make it seem like they thought they were doing the right thing, but yeah. But now we see Toga transforming into Ochako, and there's actually a really great reason for this. So she says, "My feelings are genuine, so I will give you all of my blood." She puts the syringe in both their arms and starts the transfusion. Ochako feels her body heating up, but she knows what will happen if things continue like this. So yeah, this isn't the most sterile thing to do, but desperate times call for desperate measures. And this is like a great sequence actually. It all makes sense, and I think it's actually kind of well done, to be honest. Like Toga becoming Ochako so she can give her a blood transfusion. Toga says that Jin did the same thing in My Villain Academia, using a clone of her to perform a blood transfusion. She no longer has twice his blood to make new clones, and that's why she turned into Ochako. Uraraka tells her to stop, but Toga starts stitching up the wound on Ochako's stomach. So yeah, that's probably not the best idea. You know, they're not really in a sterile environment here, but you know, I guess it'll get the job done. Toga says that Ochako actually seems willing to keep taking her blood for her to drink. She could very well have just acted like a hero and killed the crazy villain, but she decided to give help that wasn't asked for and saved the one who hurt her friends. So yeah, this is also another reason why Toga is turning such a hard face here, and it's understandable. I mean, basically what this boils down to is that all that Toga really needed was like a girl session, like a girl-to-girl therapy session essentially, and also, you know, someone not demonizing her and telling her that she was cute and trying to help her. Toga says that Ochako is really weird. Ochako replies that she's the weird one for doing this transfusion, but Toga says that she will always live the way that she wants to, and that's why she won't let herself be arrested, even if it's on Ochako's terms. Toga apologizes for the stabbing and for yelling at her. She says that Toya burned down the house that forced her to be normal, and that made her happy, but even though the house is gone, the wounds in her heart weren't, and Ochako recognized that Toga's pain was real. Even though it wasn't the easiest way, Ochako managed to touch Toga's heart, and that made her feel lighter inside. Thank you so much, Ochako-chan. I was so happy. The blood continues to be transferred, and Ochako starts crying, shouting Himiko-chan, and Toga smiles. Toga's narration continues with her saying that she drank people's blood with a mix of love and envy, but if she was loved back earlier, she could have also given her blood to many people, and if that happened, the world would be a slightly easier place to live in. We see an image of Toga letting a little bird fly and looking up to the sky as she smiles. But still, I am Himiko Toga. I lived the way I wanted to and was a normal girl with the cutest smile in the world. The two are lying on the ground. End of chapter. So, this is actually a really great sequence. I think Horikoshi did this well, and I'm sure, you know, some people have had issues with this fight or this fight arc as a whole, but I do think it's wrapping up pretty well. I like the dynamic here of the transfusion and the new friendship that they've developed. Although it was quick and it's going to be brief, I still like the way that it plays out. And I know that there's like major things going on right now, like essentially the fate of the world, or at least the fate of Japan. And it kind of rides on just two teenage girls dealing with their differences and like having this impromptu therapy session. But, you know, it is My Hero Academia after all. And And I'm sure if this was like another YA show on like CW or something, people really would have complained. But for what it's worth, I do like this sequence. And the $1 million question, of course, is Toga dead here? I mean, it seems like she's dying because, you know, the whole letting the bird fly and looking up to the sky as she smiles. There's been tons of bird analogies with Toga. And now that it's culminating with the bird being let go and flying up to the sky, along with her giving all of her blood to Ochako here to have her survive, I think this would be a good fitting death for her. I mean, she says that she doesn't want to be arrested, so she's going out on her own terms, and she is kind of, you know, damaged, almost beyond repair at this point. Even though she has had this friendship with Ochako, I don't think it's going to like permanently fix her. She knows essentially what needs to be done here. Now, granted, there is a chance that in the next chapter, I don't know, something happens and then she gets saved and then she gets arrested and, I don't know, put into some rehabilitation program or some Suicide Squad type thing for villains maybe. That would be cool, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think Horikoshi should just stick to his guns here and just have Toga die. I think this is a fitting death for her, and it gives me hope that Dabi is going to die as well, because if any of them should die, it's definitely Dabi more than Toga. But let me know what you think about this in the comments, guys. Do you think Toga is going to die here, and do you like the way that this wrapped up, and did you like it as a whole? Let me know, and if you liked the video, guys, please give it a like and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.